One thing I love about African culture is it's a little more laid back and relaxed. Time doesn't matter as much. I really absorbed the African culture living with Africans. They care a lot about relationships and other people and building those relationships. And I learned a lot from the African culture. The food I ate the most in South Africa was pap and chicken. So pap is just maize meal, cornmeal, cooked and boiled. It looks like mashed potatoes, but it's harder. So it fills your stomach up, but it's not necessarily very nutritious. So they eat a lot of pap, and then they eat chicken with it and maybe some sauce and beans or whatnot. I loved cowhead. Loved it. There's one area where I'd buy cowhead on the street. The meat was so good, especially on like the back of the head. Probably the most unique thing I ate was cow intestine. They call it muhodu. It's kind of a delicacy in their culture. It's probably the most unique thing and thing I was not used to, I guess. But they love it and it can be good. I had chicken neck, and you eat everything. So for example, with chicken, you don't just eat the meat off of the bone, but you get down to, eating kind of the tendons and what connects the chicken to the bone. And in their culture, they even get down, the kids will like chew on the bone and suck the marrow out of the bone so they get everything they can out of it. So when I came home, I could not believe like when my family ate chicken and they left so much meat and stuff on the bone. It kind of frustrated me. Another food that was common there is wors, boerewors, more common in the white areas, but people in the black areas eat it as well. It's kind of like a sausage. It comes from German culture, I believe, European culture. They don't eat a lot of sweet things, so everything's kind of plain. Milk tart was a dessert. I'll talk about kind of the differences. As I mentioned, there's towns, townships, and villages. I served in 2 townships, and then a village, and then a town. You have kind of a European culture in the towns. Afrikaans are the Dutch people who came to South Africa, and so they have a very European culture. I love it. And then they speak Afrikaans. It's a mix of Dutch, English, and German. In the townships, you have a variety of cultures. Closer to Johannesburg, it's a mix of different tribes and cultures, but as you get further away from Johannesburg, the townships are more kind of specific, one culture to each township. So you have Zulu culture, and you have kind of the Tswana culture. Those are the 2 main ones around Johannesburg, and a lot of the other tribes come off of those. Apartheid ended in the 90s, but I think there's still some tension and effects from that time period. Black people were sent out to specific areas during that time and were segregated. And those areas still exist. So you still have townships that are separate from the towns. There's tension between black and white people, but there's a lot of people who have gotten over that tension as well. The way to break down that barrier is really to love the culture, whether it's the Afrikaans culture or the African culture. As you love their culture and respect them, then they'll see you as part of them. And that's happening even within South Africa. White people and black people are understanding each other more in their cultures. They speak a different English, that's for sure, and it's a very British English. So, for example, instead of saying truck, you say bakkie. Instead of saying a trunk for a car, it's a boot, so pop the boot. You don't say pants, but you say trousers. There's a lot of crime, but if you're smart about it, you can be very safe. It's a pretty safe place in general, if you're smart about it. I never got robbed or had a terrible experience. There were a lot who did. The first area I was serving in, right after I left, the missionaries in that area got their car hijacked at gunpoint. Some people drove up and hijacked the car at gunpoint. Didn't harm the missionaries at all. And we actually ended up finding that car, I think it was about 1.5 years later, like 6 hours away from where it was actually hijacked. So that was kind of cool. Another common thing is apartments will get robbed. I heard of that happening a lot, most of the time at night, and they never harmed the missionaries or when the missionaries were gone during the day. So I probably came across like 30 different languages on my mission, I'm guessing. Just different tribal languages and people from different countries. My first couple areas, I was in Zulu areas, or languages very similar to Zulu. So I spent a lot of time really trying to learn that language as much as I could. To greet in Zulu, it's Sani Bonani or Sawubona. And then you always include like ma if you're talking to an elderly woman, kind of out of respect. So it would be, and you kind of raise your hands to show respect. So a typical greeting to a Zulu woman would be Sani Bonani ma. If it's to a man, it's Baba. So Sani Bonani Baba. My third area was in a village in Botswana, and they spoke Setswana. And even in South Africa, a lot of people speak Setswana. So a typical greeting in the village is Dumela, and that's just hello. And kind of the same thing, you kind of raise your hands to show respect. So Dumela ma or Dumela, instead of Baba, it's Ra in Setswana, so Dumela Ra. And then you have Afrikaans. It's originated from German, Dutch, and English. So for example, it's interesting to say, what is your name? It's Wat is your naam. So very similar to English, a lot of English influence. But a typical greeting in Afrikaans is Hoe gaan dit? It's fun to learn those greetings, and people really respect you as you respect their language and their culture, and they're willing to open up and talk to you as you learn more about them. So